Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. Anyway, we have another clock to work on, and obviously this one's going to be new to me because I've never seen one except hanging on a wall, never asked about it or anything else. This is called a self-winding clock company clock. Let me show you what I got. So this is a clock I have. Let's give a quick measurement of the dial, which we're approximately 14.5 inches. The box itself, 21 by 21 inches. And this clock wasn't wrapped very well by GW. That's where I got it from. They had one layer of the large bubble wrap around this, and that was it. And so the glass that was sitting in here fell into the clock. It's got a real nice wood ring that you push up against the glass to hold it in, and then it's got metal clips in here that are bent straight out because this clock was dropped on the way of being shipped. And it also had the pendulum inside here, but it was up on the dial, and the pendulum, there's actually no way to get it off unless you remove the movement. Well, the screws kind of got ripped out, and so the movement was able to move forward in order to drop the pendulum and then eventually slid up to the front. Anyway, the glass is good, the wood is good. I can take care of that. Let's look inside this clock. So looking inside this clock, I already took the two screws out. I don't think the screws actually fit this clock, but they found some that fit in the hole to hold it from turning. I don't understand this second gear. It's got the clicking system around it, and I'm sure there's parts that are missing to this clock that would make this maybe a master clock. Now when they advertise this, they advertise it as an A, and on the line most of the stuff you find is an F, so I don't exactly know what an A means even today. It had a nut on here which did not go to the clock. It didn't even thread on. They just got the stick on there. I took that off, obviously. I was excited, so I had to jump into this clock a little bit before I made the video. I didn't learn too much, but anyway, it's got a nice metal dial. It has a piece, well, it has wood trim all the way around, and by the looks of it, this wood trim had a felt on there, and so when the door shut, I would guess the felt would push up against the door and seal it from any dust or whatnot. That's the best I can come up with there. It's got a fuse. I don't know yet whether any of this wiring's even right or wrong or anything else. You can operate this clock evidently on 2 D batteries, and I tried that, but the batteries I had were dead. I couldn't even get the wires to spark, and I put them together, so I still got to get batteries. Who uses D batteries anymore? Anyway, this is the movement, and messing with this a little bit, it looks like we have a few bushings. See the verge, I think they call it, the back one's really wobbling around, and I don't know about the rest of these. I'm going to have to check them out to see if I need new bushings or what. This clock scares me a little bit because I've never done one, and there's a chance you got to be precise when you're putting in your contacts and that kind of stuff, and so I'm going to have to pay attention to where they're at, as in taking good pictures so I can get it right. But the first thing I'm going to do, besides disconnect all these wires, because these wires mean nothing to me, I found some wiring diagrams on the internet, but that's why I'm not going to worry so much about these wires here. I do know when they were showing, like for instance here, this would be considered the positive, and the negative would be down lower, so this one's not even wired into anything. Maybe that was there to hold that wire. But the other place is negative. Like I say, I don't even know if this is wired right. I don't know if someone used, let's say, a 6-volt battery when this is supposed to be a 3 and burnt the contacts. I have no idea. We're just getting it blind because that's what you do when you get it off of GW or actually almost everywhere else. Now, like I say, these screws were out. There's one screw still left in. The others were loose if they didn't fall out already. And so, like I say, that's how the pendulum came out. So, just to let you know, I tried screwing them back in and they don't screw in because the wood's stripped. So if you didn't want to try to change the backboard, you can get a toothpick, cut it to the depth you need, and because those are bigger screws, I just shove a whole piece of that in there with glue when I'm ready to set the movement in, and I just screw it in and it makes it tight. That's just like on your cuckoo clocks that take the smaller screws, or your kitchen clocks that on the dial surrounding. You'll sometimes find 5 or 6 holes beat into it. It only needs 2. That's because the other holes stripped out and they didn't have enough sense to add wood or add something to it so you could use the same exact hole. So trying to keep things clean, that's what I'm going to do, is use the holes and use glue and pieces of toothpick in there to build it up so it'll grab again. Anyway, let me de-wire this. Let me take these things off so you can look at this movement. I also forgot to mention, down here and up there, there's locks that takes a key. I don't know, you know if it does take a key that you could lock this door shut using that key. So that way, number one, the door don't flap around. Number two, no one's going to mess with the clock, especially if it's in a company and everyone thinks they know best. So I wanted to mention that too. I just tried it out, and the key isn't a heart attack. It's a number 6 key that you put in there, and then this will come out and lock your door shut. So this is a pendulum. You can see the damage it got beating around in the box. What can you expect? Sad to say, but they've hired minimum wage people that either have a problem one way or another, and they don't have anyone watching over them evidently. Anyway, you see there's a hole in the pendulum. That there is because the one rod goes into it, and then the pendulum hangs by this here. There's the rod that sticks in it, and it ticks. Like I say, I'm not sure if I could even get that on there now that it's out of the box. You couldn't before because it was too tight. Got the one part on. There we go. That thing is very heavy. And it is ticking because I did wind this thing up. I wound it up by hand, and in which it doesn't take that much winding because I don't think the clock could handle moving it. But this here pendulum bob is very heavy. Let's go ahead and take it back off. Now let's weigh it on the scale. With the stick, which the stick weighs nothing. Oh, he turned off already. This is kilograms. It weighs 0.915. Let's bring it over to pounds. It weighs 2 pounds, 0.1. So coming back to the clock, like I say, this here would move up and down. Come to find out why, I'm going to guess during shipping, this has got a screw that holds that into place. The screw is about to fall out. I don't know if I can get to it. Yeah. It has just a little bit of movement up and down on the one end. Let me check these back gears. This here's sprung out of the way. It looks like it should be clear over. But I'm sure when the pendulum came out, it destroyed that area. This here is supposed to flutter up and down. Once this kicks into gear, I think, it's supposed to flutter up and down like this. And inside there, I don't know if you can see it, this gear right there, that's what winds the spring when it calls to have it wound. I'm going to go ahead and take this back frame off. And by the looks of it, we have one screw here, one screw here, one screw here, and you notice that one's missing. Come to the back side. Look in here for sure. There's no screw in it. They have a plug right there, which might be just a pin to hold it into place, because that pendulum is quite heavy. So let's go ahead and take those screws out and get this back bar off, and we'll go from there. It's strange, these here screws you take out, it came off, but you notice they're all kind of like one piece. So they're staying with the frame until I actually open the frame up, and then you can get them off. So that's going to hit down evidently, bounce up and hit this, and that's going to cause it to wind. I'm only guessing. On the movement here, up here we have a 198. I'll call that a 990. That, after the 8, it almost looked like they tried stamping an 8 on it, but I think it's a 9. If it's cleaned up better, you'd see it better. Down here it says Self-Winding Clock Company, patented. Part of it's missing. I think it's a date. And then it says 4/98. So I can't believe it. this might be a 98. I know these clocks, the best I found were roughly in the 40s and 50s when these things were put out there to operate, like in schools and whatnot. Schools, your subway stations, trains, that kind of stuff, so that all their clocks would match up and be the same for the way these things operate and are connected to, let's say, talk. The main clock talk to it. But to tell you the truth, I still want to get it into this clock and clean it. There's not really anything to it when it comes to the movement. The important part is getting these contacts back to where they should be. And so I'm going to have to try to take the best of pictures I can. And online, I think it gives you some kind of a degree or whatever for what the contacts should be made at. Actually, this wire's bent over crooked. I think that's the way it's supposed to be, because the other side's that way too. And it does make contact on the end of that one. See how that one's bent over also? So it's making a double contact there. And every time it bounces, it disconnects, connects, disconnects. This side connects, disconnects. So one connects, then the other one connects. So whether it must, one side will hit, and then the reverse of the wires, will say, makes it pop back down. I'm just guessing here. I have no idea. Here's a hand nut on here. I'm not sure why. I would think that hand nut you'd want up on the dial, just because. Let's take this thing off and see if it fits up here. It didn't fit any better than the original one that someone stuck on there. Whether they screwed up the threads or not, I don't know. But it does fit on here. It's big enough. It might supposed to be there because it's big enough. This isn't gonna pull off. Although it will pull far enough, it will pass that gear and it starts slipping. So I'm going to have to possibly come up with a washer still to fit on there. Like I say, we don't know how much this clock's been messed with or anything else. So anyway, let me put this one back on and let me get some pictures taken. So let's go ahead and disassemble this, because I want to just get it clean, and I'm going to shine up the plate too. This here, when it comes around, it's meant to connect this switch together. When it connects this switch together, it causes this down here to start winding the clock until it's got enough winding to it. I don't know the full understanding of it, because I think this clock knows when it's wound up enough. Maybe because it doesn't bounce anymore. I don't know, because I had never had one. And I watched a few videos, but I forgot just as fast as I learned. I hate to tell you that, but I did. So anyway, that's what that's for, is to wind the clock up. And so now I'm going to disconnect this, because this is going to the powers that up. Well, that's not even snug or anything. Makes me wonder whether that's even the right screw to this thing. It's spinning, but it's not coming out. So this screw here is spinning but not coming out. That's because on the back side here there's a nut, and I'm going to guess you take that nut off and then this whole thing will come out. So let me try that. So we got these two off. These two are the ones that connect like this, and they go right here. I had to take this screw out in order to, this nut wasn't on there, that goes on the inside along with that washer. I had to twist it out of here because it didn't want to just pop out. And I don't know if that's threaded or not, but it just wouldn't slide out of that hole there. And I had to take that screw out there in order to get it by so it'd circle around. And so before I damage this, I'm going to take it off also. It was already, must have been the other side, it was already, no, it's this inside, already loose and falling off. And I snugged it up just to see if I'd get to tick. And it kind of wants to tick, but I'm sure it's dirty is why it's not. So there you can tell we got power on our spring. And there's a chance. I'm going to throw the screwdriver in there for now, but I might want to put a zip tie on that, because I want the spring to stay small until I can get it out of there. Although it is a light one, so because it's so light, I didn't have much left anyway. Anyway, it's so light that I should be able to get it out of here and not have a problem. So here's where it winds up at when it's electrically told to wind. Now we're starting to move again. And this, like I say, is supposed to wind until it's wound up enough to run the clock. These two are just hanging out here, and by the looks of it, this here must turn into a magnet, and down here it causes this to bounce back and forth in front of the magnet. That's what I'm guessing. Anyway, I'm going to take those two screws out, and we should be able to free that up to get it out of our way. They're loose. Some of the screws didn't belong to it, I'd say. So we got this nut, weird nut, taken off of there. It looks like that's my next one to take off. That there's threaded through, and it has this nut here I'm going to take off also. So for the most part we have everything off. I'm going to go ahead and this has got the spring on it that goes to that plate that moves. I'm going to go ahead and take this one off. Then that's part of, I'm going to guess, start separating the frame, even though we have this one that actually probably does it. See, we should have another screw like this, but they had that silver one. I'm just guessing. They all should match. I'm turning this one, that's turning on me. So I'm going to probably have to hold on to it somehow or another. And that's into the frame a little bit, so it's, we'll say, locked in there. It does turn, but it's locked in there. So until I start separating the plates all the way, this one fit. Yeah. There again, it's locked in there. So that's free, so we keep ending up with silver nuts on one side. So maybe they are original to this. I'm still have some parts that are stuck together, I guess I'll say. So I don't actually have to take these posts out. Just have to undo one side. So these two here, and now this should pull apart and pieces start falling all over the place. To clean this, I'm going to pull these out of the way because those are my insulators. Even though there's nothing here, we might as well take a picture of what we can see that's out loud, I guess I'll put it that way. Yeah, you can see it's pretty dirty, cruddy, however you want to call it. Gotta check that out again. This one don't look too bad, but the bigger gear's pretty dirty. And there's that one. And I need to get a picture of this to show where it's at, how it is, or whatever. So to separate this from the spring, there's a pin right there. I don't know if it's tapered or not. Could be, but it's kind of big looking. I wouldn't think it was. I'll have to mess with it and see if it's going to come out or not. Because I definitely want to clean the spring. I can clean the spring just the way it is, I think. I don't know if I can get this apart or if these are kind of like nuts. These are nuts by the looks of it that you could take off and then pull this plate off to get the spring off. Because even pulling that pin, unless I tap it, I don't want to get carried away. But this isn't coming apart just yet. And it might not come apart till you get the spring out, because it does connect to the spring. And there's a chance that spring needs cleaned. Now to clean the spring with a piece of my brown scratchy pad and WD-40. We'll clean that, rub it down the best we can, and then we use denatured alcohol to get the WD-40 off. Then I'll use a mainspring lube on this. So there's the pin that the spring, I thought, originally hooked to. This just goes to show you it's good to have video or pictures, because after this has been over a day and a lot of stuff going on in my life, and I come back to work on this, that spring end will not fit over this for nothing. I'm thinking, what's wrong with it? I checked my videos, I put them on the computer so I could see. I forgot this piece here. This slides over, it's got the crack in there. It goes over that pin. And now I have a place to hook the spring to. So this is a difficult spring to put back on because I can't just wind it up and keep it in its place. And when I went to start thinking about taking it off here, all of a sudden the whole thing came sprung out of here. So my plan is to get the spring started and leave it out here, setting this on there and putting the screws in, and then I'm going to see if I can wind this thing up to wind the spring inside this. So let me do this off camera and I'll tell you if it worked. As you can see, I put the 3 nuts on, and now I'm turning this wheel because that's what's winding this, and it's slowly going in here. And so far that's working out pretty good for me. There is a peg inside here I gotta watch for, but I think that's more for when I get ready to hook the end of the spring in here. You gotta hold both of these when you're doing this. And this might prove to be difficult because I have to get on the other side of that peg. And right there, you can see the little divot, or what do you want to call that thing? That's where the peg is. So there it's already starting to catch, but I can't allow it to catch until I get beyond that peg. So the peg's still there. And we caught here, so we have to take it off. And there's our peg. And there it caught again. So now this springs together. I just have to tighten those 3 nuts up. Now I'm relieved. Well, for this part. I did just a quick shine on here compared to this. I'm not going to do all the plates. I was figuring on doing the very front one originally because there's a hole in the dial and you might accidentally see it and I want to shine. But other than that, I'm happy with this. It just got done. It doesn't have any wax on it or anything else. This here is just a mag and aluminum polish from Mother's. Mother's makes it. No, I'm not sponsored. I'm just using what someone else found that actually works really well. And this here didn't have, which kind of surprised me, but didn't have the lacquer over it. It's just the brass, and that's why it's just that, let's say, dead look, which is just fine. No one's going to see this movement, except maybe through that little hole. Well, I've been slowly putting things on. I'm only guessing because, in my opinion, I didn't have enough pictures, and to make sure you know whether you're on the front or the back of the clock when you're putting this stuff on. This one's not totally in, it needs those screws put in, but the winder part I think I've got in now. I still have to put this contact in, but as this thing's winding up, this here's starting to turn, so that tells me, I guess I got that part right so far. And also because I took this apart, and I guess because it's new to me, all these pegs in here, I wasn't really paying attention and should have left some of them in there so I could take this clock apart like a normal clock, so you get a better picture of where the gears set, even though there's hardly any gears in this thing. But I'm working on it and I'm getting it there. Then we'll have to wipe our fingerprints out of the wax. Guess what? You see that there? That's this piece and this piece. That tells you I might just have to open that up again to put it where it belongs. It's level and it wants to tick. I don't know how much I need to wind this because it's almost all the way down. Every time I start winding it, it starts ticking, but I don't have the wires or the battery hooked up to any of this. But to me, that's a good sign. And by the way, what I'm doing here is I'm manually winding it. So anyway, so far I'm happy with that. I have to look at my pictures. I still have an insulator. This nut they use for the hands, and it doesn't fit, so that's out. So I have an insulator and 3 screws. I'm going to have to figure out where those go by looking at my pictures, I hope. Putting the level, I have it leveled. I put that weight on there just so I could listen to it tick, because this rod was really bent up and I wanted to get it a lot closer because I've straightened it since then, and hopefully with the even tick-tock sound I hear right now, the original pendulum, this, which is a lot heavier and longer than that, should make this thing run fine. But before I get carried away with all that, like I say, I still need to wire this and get a diagram online so I have a better idea. This is just set on there. It's got teeth, but there's nothing that goes to it, so that part of the clock I'm going to say is missing. And my wildest guess is possibly either this is, I'm going to call it the mother clock that told the other ones what time it was, or the part that's on here is supposed to possibly, this would be a slave clock, and this here would be a way that it adjusts the time from the mother clock. I don't know, I'm only guessing on this. Now that it's clean, you can see the numbers better. Now you can see it's a 198990, I do believe. Even my glasses on. That's what I'd say it is. 198990. And there's the patent numbers there. And just below here, so that shouldn't fall off as long as the door's shut on the clock. What I might do is try to make it so it wedges on there with a little bit of a very small amount of glue or something, just to make it be a tighter fit. Because right now you can spin it, you can feel there's something in there because it drags a little bit, and that's why it's able to work right now. So I guess I'm gonna have to give up on this clock for now until I can find some parts for the clock, because by the looks of it, half the clock is here, let's just put it that way. On here, it shows this here. I have that inside the clock, but I don't have the switch, I guess we'll call it, that operates from it to make everything else evidently work. Like I said, I'm trying to understand this. I printed off a book on these clocks, but like I say, the best I can see, I don't have parts. I do know if you go over onto eBay, because I don't know where else you look, I've tried, but eBay does have some parts, but most of them, they want just for the part $40, and that don't count shipping, and that's if they happen to have the part that you need. And so, like I say, I'm going to have to put the rest of this clock on hold. Yes, it is running as long as I wind it with my finger. I'll show it to you again, because I already showed it to you once. It ticks along just fine. The best I can find this here, I don't know what this goes to. It goes to my clock evidently, because this is the right length for the seconds, but on all the clocks I've found looking online, none of them actually have this with the gear on there. And so whether this came off of let's say a master clock, because I don't think this is a master clock. I think this is, let's call it a slave clock. I could be wrong, I don't know. The best I've found, this is a F model, but the parts I need, right inside there is what I showed you the picture of. That's what's supposed to also turn the winder on, not counting or not forgetting. We also have this one here that's supposed to, I guess, too, but I don't know that much about this clock to understand exactly what all it's supposed to do or how it's supposed to work. All this book that I printed out does talk about measurements. The main reason I printed out this book, let's say, is because I was looking on how to wire the clock, and good luck finding it. If you do find something, it seems to be almost French, such as right here, for example. Like I said, I'm not a rocket scientist, but there's a minus sign here. This is minus, I guess. It's supposed to be a blue wire, not the color matters, unless you have the colors. But then on this side, it's a positive that goes, good luck figuring that out, I guess. It's you just keep testing around with your wires until it supposedly goes. Like I say, I don't have this part here to possibly help engage what they call the motor. So there's not much out there to really look at, because these are a company clock, such as schools, factories, that kind of stuff. These weren't made to be in homes, and so let's just say there's not that many of them, or that many of them left, because possibly if the buildings were tore down, the clocks went with them usually. If it was a clock that the public was able to buy, there'd be a lot more out there and easier to find parts. Anyway, Ken's online. Evidently he does videos too, but he talks about them, and that's where I guess this information came from that I got for the, let's say, building this book offline. You can look up that online, and that might help you if you're having the same problems trying to figure out or find any information about it. Look under Ken's Clock Clinic. So I hope this here video helped you. I did get the movement running, as long as I do it by hand, and hopefully you can get yours running too, and hopefully your clock, if you happen to have one, has all the parts with it and all the switches as well. Anyway, like I say, I hope you appreciate this. Give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe, because it's free. And until next time, God bless.